Okay, so right off you can see the structure I work with here in Manga Studio. So now you can see my palettes on the left and my layers on the right. So what I've got here is I've got my fairly clean sketch of Nonon from Kill the Kill that I've done, along with two references of my own art of her that I've just put there for swatches, pretty much for her hair and eyes and so forth. So just to show here, you can see on the right, I'm working at the moment on a new layer on top of my sketches in this black pen inking 2 at a brush size of 20. You can see everything on the left there. You can always just pause that to have a look if you want. Inking 2 was a thing I fiddled with myself. I'm not really au fait with making custom brushes in Manga Studio. I really should be. But the one you can see above it, inking, I believe that was one that I got from the Friendin brush set, which I will put a link for as well. It's basically a full sort of set of sort of wet and dry media and inking and all kinds of different brushes for Manga Studio, which is pretty much what I would call the definitive set for you know, my own opinion. So this inking 2 is, you can see the stroke on the little demonstration window there is a little bit different. I'm not sure why I do this inking 2 now. I think I was just fiddling with some brushes one day. So I would pretty much mainly go between one of these inking pens, either my own or Friendin's inking pen, and sometimes G pen. So you can see there on the right, that inking layer that I've created there, that has the red on it, that's my first inking layer. I tend to ink on multiple layers in case I need to move the strokes around and sort of reshape my character, because I am, again, I do have a formidable lean, and I've got various other things that mean my lines can be brilliant in the first go, they can be absolutely awful. So I like to make life easier for myself. So what do you notice here? The little icons, I'll try and zoom in on those for you. Those are just to show that I've created vector layers for this line art. It just means the line art comes out a little cleaner and is easier to reshape and fiddle around with. I won't even go into the difference between vectors and rasters, but the basic gist of it is that the flat color will be in a raster layer, and any painting is done on a raster layer, and things like text and fonts and really sort of crisp lines that you want to resize, sort of graphic looking lines like these lines I'm doing right now, they would all be in a vector layer. So you see the sketch I'm working with here, it's just the blue and the red, which I normally have, which is blue for basic outlines, red for details and outfit, just to help my eyeballs discern things. Sometimes I have up to 3 or 4 colours on a sketch. Sometimes I go through things like purple and green as well, if it's a really complicated little thing. But this under sketch you're looking at here is much cleaner than the original sketch lines were. Because the screencasting software does slow down, my software slows down things like my brush strokes. I don't screencast everything. If it didn't bug me, then I probably could just screencast everything. But so I'm very freeform when I sketch. Sometimes things come to absolutely nothing. So there was a fair amount of baseline sketching before even the red and blue lines came up. So this mess is by no means the messiest that I get. I'm just going on doing these little skulls here that I've put in her chain. She's gone for this sort of punky look. I've ended up calling the file Lil Non because that's what we call her, but she was originally sort of punk non. I just tried to put some spikes here on this this band and arm, but I didn't like it, so so you see all these layers on the right at the moment, those are all line art layers at the moment. I'm just having a look here. What am I doing? Yeah, I put a little sprig there on her beret. I've drawn her with a beret before because she favours large hats, and rather than drawing her very big elaborate hat again, I just sort of give her a beret. So here I've gone in with a blue layer here, on which I'm going to put my flat colours. So this is another handy Manga Studio shortcut. You see there the sort of the fill option on the left there. I've clicked the option to select for all layers. So even though I'm on the layer below my various lines, I'm able to just click with my fill tool and fill in up to the lines, which is a really big time-saving tool for the type of colouring that I do and that a lot of other sort of comic and manga style colourers will do. So it means I can just sort of do the line art, in this case this vector line art, which is really clean, and then I can just go underneath and just colour everything really easily. And you can set it to close gaps if you've got gaps in the lines. I tend not to fiddle with that setting too much. I've got it at a level I like now, and if there is one little break that's bugging me, I just go in and fill it in. But it really is quite handy. You can actually chop off an awful lot of work. Let's go through colouring here. So I want to stick with our usual patterns of blacks and pinks and so forth. So going through, I decide I want that to be a dark pink. See, she's got coming out there. I'm not quite sure what she's doing here. But Nonon's awesome. So I'm just going through doing this. So these clips are sped up to, I think, 4 times my actual speed. If I'd allowed it to be closer to the actual speed, even though it would have shown you the speed I do work at, it would have made the video ludicrously long. And this, for how simple this picture and this colouring method is, it's not worth the time for you to have to sit and watch that in a really prolonged way. So I'll hopefully be able to use my little post tools to go around and zoom in on some of these menus for you. As I said, I did have requests to have sort of a wider screen resolution to sort of show how I work with the layers on the left and right. So it's nothing very complicated, but if you know, I like watching painting ever since the days of going back to watching sort of Tony Hart doing his sort of canvas painting and things, just for relaxation, as well as him talking through the methods. But of course, you know, if I just go sort of, I'm zoomed in around the picture, you can see the picture taking form, but if you're a beginner, then it doesn't really give you much insight to what's going on at the sides. So hopefully if you watch these for relaxation, it's not too distracting. And for the people who wanted to see how my layers and everything work, hopefully this will be beneficial for you. So I've created some extra layers here with a little clip mask on here that I'll zoom in for you, just like I do on my other pictures, so that any colours I do on this layer, you see there with the vertical red band, the only things that will be affected will be what's directly underneath it. So for some reason I think I accidentally there made that a vector layer. Silly me. I've gone back and made that a raster layer now. So I'm going in with a purple. It's probably easiest and a beginner thing to go in and shade in black and white. Sometimes I do shade in black and white on very basic comic images, but most of the time I like to make my colouring a bit more varied. So often I will go in for slight purples. I do notice that I go in for pale purples when I shade on white, and sometimes dark purples when I shade on dark. So I'm going in with going on this purple paint now. So as you can see at the moment, it just looks like I'm painting flat purple on there. So even though it's giving you an idea of the shading, that's not how it's eventually going to look, because I will put it onto a multiply layer. So if you know the basics of digital colouring, you'll probably know what a multiply layer is, but if you don't, for any reason, I will show you very shortly. So my way of doing the shading, which is probably very unprofessional, but it works well for me, on this simple style, is I actually outline all my shadows with the pen and fill them in. So it just sort of saves me trouble when I've got these big chunks of shadow. You can't do it if you're sort of watercolour shading or painting, because it wouldn't work. But when it's just this cell shading style, it's what I do. It makes everything really nice and crisp, and it saves you time. Doing the little skulls. See, if I was being really, really awkward and very conscientious of the level of shading, I would be going in and zooming in, but I'm not zooming in too close. I'm adding some shading there under her hair to show where it's sitting on her. I've got one little patch there that I've forgotten to put shading on. I think I'll come back to that in a minute. You quite clearly see there how I'm just drawing the outline of my shadows and then filling them in. Just going over a couple here that I've forgotten. I've still left that annoying blank area there, but rest assured that will be sorted. So what I'm doing now is a thing that I sometimes do, not always, but I have selected on the layer I've just been doing the shading on, I have selected all the purple that I've painted and I've made a layer above it. So I've turned the opacity down of that first purple layer and I'm now painting within the purple I've already painted. It's a bit awkward to explain. I'll try to hopefully outline this and make it clearer. So that's how it should look. You should have these little marching ants going around the shading you've already done. I do often go in and do a second layer of shading, not necessarily with the little ants, but it makes things cleaner. It means I can't accidentally sort of shade double over something. What I've done there, see, is I've turned both onto multiply, so now you can see how it just darkens the colour, and it also gives a slight purple shade, but it doesn't just look like flat purple on top of the pink, on top of the black, on top of everything now. But what the selection with double shadow allows me to do is do little fringe shadows. You can see along the edges here, there, which can make, again, if you're doing this graphic style of shading, can make it look nice and rich. It makes it look deeper, just to have those dark lines alongside the edges of the shadows. It's probably just down to personal taste. It's a thing I quite like, so it's a thing that I did for a long time when I was doing a lot of artwork of a character I was using called Angel. But I sort of went off it for a while, but because she had dark skin and she was quite muscular, the shiny skin look really worked well for her, so I used it a lot for that. But I've gone back to doing that a bit because I do like it whenever the art sort of pops quite nicely. So this is really simple hair shading. It's very basic shapes. I'm just following the flow of the hair here. Again, this really isn't anything complicated. It's you know, you can start off doing the very basics of this, and this is basically just a basic technique. Maybe it looks like it has more finesse, but that if it does, it's just because I've been doing this for years. It's a very nice and basic method, so it's a fun way to sort of use sort of that basic sort of shadow projection to make your art look really nice and crisp, especially if you're going for that sort of that anime, that sort of pop style. So the little fringe shadows look especially good on curves and in hair and on things like metal on shiny surfaces. So there's that annoying little bit I forgot to fill in. Now I'll just do that manually. There we go. Sometimes in my infinite eyesight I manage to miss great big chunks of my own picture. That's not very good. Okay, let me see here now. Okay, so now I'm taking a lighter purple, though it doesn't necessarily need to be a lighter purple, because these highlight layers are going to be set to screen, and screen will always lighten. Multiply will always darken, and screen will always lighten. So because it's this sort of gentle pop, sort of easygoing pop style, I'm just sort of doing some of these hard highlights. I'll probably go and do some soft ones later as well, but this is sort of very quick and easy. Just going and sort of highlighting some of these wrinkles in the stockings. Of course, it wouldn't be complete without having loads of streaks on the hair, so there we go, just to, again, just always going with the flow of the hair. Just any little bits that stick up. Highlighting, again, these round highlights just sort of accentuate the curves of the beret there. I've turned down the opacity. Let me see. And what I'm going and doing now is I'm doing my little reflected light highlights that again I do on these sort of cartoony and anime type pictures that I want to pop. So I've got, as you can see in the left there, I've got a very white pale blue. I'm just going around framing all the outer edges of her. So where she would be standing against her imaginary backdrop at the moment. Just see, even on this very basic level, before I've even set it to screen, it just makes it sort of, it gives you the impression that she's standing with the sun or the sky or just an open vista to her back. Even if that's not necessarily what you're picturing, studio lighting or something even, it just sort of, it brings out the shape of the character, especially whenever you're going around. So even though that sort of that wrist, that gauntlet thing she's wearing there is coloured very, very simply, the fact that it's got the shading, the edge shading, a highlight and the reflected light on it makes it look quite 3D for something that's very, very easy to do. Okay, so I need to put some stripes on these stockings. So I've gone in on a layer above the flat colour, but below all the rest of the shading. So I'm just going in with this pink over the black. If I had any sense, I would have just selected the black so that I was only affecting the black. But as you can see here, it's going over the bracelet and over everything here. But I'm just being quick, so I'm just going in with the pink, drawing with the smooth watercolour which comes with the Manga Studio 5, and I'm just putting in some strokes, then softening the edges. It's all with the same tool. The watercolour tools in particular I found are very, very good. So I'm able to just go and lay down the colour and then soften, all with the same size and type of tool. I'm going in, adding some gentle brush, so she looks a bit like she's been bruised here, but that's just a little bit on top of the skin. In pink, in watercolour, I've turned the opacity down. Again, it just brings out that tiny little bit of sort of warmth of the skin. So now I'm going in, again you can see my colour picker there, it's purple. I'm going in on top of my hard shading layers, but below my hard highlights, just to give a bit of a dimensional feel to that. And then above that, I'm doing another screen layer with the same purple and just bringing a little more light and a little more shadow to those sides of her body. So that's all I need to do in Manga Studio for the time being. So I take the picture into Photoshop and I've got this patterned background. So wasn't sure what to do for a backdrop for her. Again, she's sort of punky looking, but I wasn't quite sure. So what I'm doing here is I'm fiddling, I'm blurring the line art here. I've doubled up the line art so that I can duplicate it and blur a copy just to soften it. I've got an overlay texture again, just you can get these from free online texture sites, just to give a slight grunge look to the page there. I've been in the habit of doing for years, going in adding a little glint here on these little metal bits. In one of the, either the assorted or special effect, I think special effect brushes in Photoshop, you get some little glints. So I just go on top of a layer of everything else and add some little white glints to prominent little bits of jewellery and so forth. So here I'm going to have a little fiddle with what I want to do here. Graffiti, text behind her. This is just a marker font. I could probably just leave her as she is, but I'm all full of myself now, so I want to try and put something down. So we've got having a look at the different styles you can apply to texts. Fiddled with several of those and I wasn't sure. Changing up the size. Anyway, on the right hand side there in Photoshop, you can see my layers menu again, and then you can see those things you can see on the right hand side there are styles. So I've applied a style to the text there. I'm still not brilliantly sure if I want it. Like, no. Okay, so I've cropped that down. And now I've just stuck my little watermarks on there, but done my little signature. And what we have on her there is we have, she's been finished up with a stroke just to bring her out around the front. So what we do here is I flatten the image, change the size. Always good whenever your original image is as large as it can be to allow you to get the best quality out of it. So I've been doing it so long, resizing the image is still a case of trial and error. I've got my little on-screen keyboard there. Don't ask. This is the nitty gritty of me deciding on a size. No, 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 no. 330 I decide. Okay, so that's great. So now we've got the flat image. And go into my pictures folder. So I save as PNG these days just because the quality is very good. So let's give it a name. There's my other art in there, you can see. So it's little Non, and that's us.